If I'm crappie fishing, I love crappie fishing. I use it every day. Learning how to use that jigging bite, I think part of that was I wanted to use my live sonar out in 70 feet of water to prove that.
What's up, everybody, and welcome back to the Hook One Pod. Hey, we're here at Hook One Bait and Tackle in the studio. As always, I'm Pete. I'm missing my right-hand man, Louie. He's somewhere in the marsh on Harson's Island right now. But we've got an awesome guest for you this week. We've got our friend Rob Jones with us, our Canadian friend Rob Jones from across the border. What's going on, Rob? How are you, man?
Good. Glad to be here. Good day to participate in a video.
Talk fishing while it's blowing 30 miles an hour out of the south.
Absolutely.
How was fishing for you the other day?
The last 2 days has been pretty good. Putting some time on the water. As most of you guys know, I dabble a little bit in musky fishing. I got a lot of friends that do it, so between jumping on my boat and other people's boats, the more time you can spend on the water, the better. I'm all about learning. Anytime I can learn new water, that's a bonus. So we put some fish together, so that was an even bigger bonus. But learning new patterns and colors, and that's the main goal right now.
Yeah, it's a big reason I wanted you on the show, to be honest with you, is I've got you on Facebook, and we're going to talk about kind of how we've gotten connected. We work with a couple of the same companies and stuff like that, and it's always good to be with someone that's very diverse on the water, and it seems like every week you're posting something different, whether it's steelhead coming out of Lake Erie or big walleyes coming out of Lake Huron, or now you're doing them. I looked over, and you guys went 10 for 10 on muskies with some giants. I'm just like, hey, this guy, Rob, he's getting everywhere. He's doing it all. You got to love it, man. You got to love the opportunity that we have in this area.
Absolutely. And, I'm pretty central to most of the Great Lakes. Like you said, Huron, Erie, Lake Ontario, even Lake Sinclair, they're all within a 2-hour drive of my house. And, I just look at the wind and make a decision that morning or that evening based on which way is better for the wind and obviously what better reports are coming in.
So. That's awesome. So, hey, let's get right into it. If anyone's looking to find you, so they're looking to find these pictures and find all this stuff that you guys have been putting out and you guys have been doing, you guys can head over to Instagram, check out One More Pass Sportfishing over there. And Rob, that's what we're going to kind of talk about for a little bit. First, I just want to thank you, man. I want to thank you for taking some time out of your day to be here. We're going to have a lot of fun here in this next hour. But let's get into a little bit about what One More Pass Sportfishing is, because I originally thought it was like a charter business. And I'm like, he I don't know. I'm not even going to speculate. Why don't you tell me what it is?
Well, One More Pass Sportfishing started out as the idea that I was going to grow a charter business for a retirement project like most of the friends around me do. Like I said, I do work with a lot of other boats. I work on the back of charter boats all summer long. I help everybody out when they need an extra deckhand. I think that's just part of the learning game. So when I started the idea of One More Pass Sportfishing, it was the idea to grow a charter business, and now it's kind of transformed into more of a platform for promoting a lot of the companies that I work with. So yes, I do still charter. I do charter on a limited basis. So if you call me and you're looking for a charter, because of my busy lifestyle and schedule and a lot of the other sports that I play, I can't always be available for chartering. Most of you notice I don't fish on weekends because my weekends are my hobby. So we're traveling across Canada and the U.S. doing some other dog sports and stuff like that. So that's why I fish during the week. I've got a good group of staff that work for me, so it's able to, let me pick and choose the days that I need to. So if Thursday's not blowing, I take Thursday off. If Wednesday's going to rain, I'm not going. So that's made it very easy for me to get out on the fish when the wind's not blowing. But again, it kind of limits me to who's available and who's, willing to go fish during the week. So
that's awesome.
A big part of it.
That's awesome. You mentioned something in there that I thought was really interesting. You work on the back of boats. Man, I always said that if I got to go down south or even, I love working the back of the boat. I'm not necessarily the driving type. Do you really enjoy doing like the mate side of it? Because that's really like the fishing side of it, don't you think?
Yeah, I absolutely like it because as you know, as a boat owner, especially with a small boat, doesn't matter how many people. I think everybody knows I have a Ranger 621. So, putting 3 or 4 guys on there is max. So I get a phone call from a friend of mine who's fishing out of Erio, and he's like, hey, you want to jump on the back with me? And I'm like, I get to run 14 rods. I get to run riggers, gypsies, you name it. Absolutely, I'm going to be putting those lines out. I'm going to get to fish all day, and everybody knows on my boat I only have one rule, and that's I don't reel fish. So I just want to run my electronics, set lines. I like to analyze everything that's going on. So being able to put 14 lines out for a whole day, or even a double during a day, that's awesome. I get to learn so much more about the fish, where they are in the column, what's working, what's not working, how the conditions change throughout the day. Watching the sonar as the fish move up and down the column, that's worth every penny to me.
Yeah, spot on, man. Fishing is so much more. Louie and I talk about that a lot when customers come into the shop. But like to us, fishing is so much more than reeling the fish. Now, if you're someone that only has the weekends to fish, or maybe they only have a half day of the week to fish, yeah, you want to be on fish, you want to be reeling fish. But for guys like us that have the opportunity to be out on the water, I think what you were explaining, like the process itself, is just as fun to piece it together, watch the electronics, try different leads, different lengths, different colors, all that sort of stuff. Kind of piece together the puzzle. Let everyone else reel in the fish. I think that's super cool because fishing is, like I said, it's so much more. I don't think a lot of people realize, like the guys that are all in on it, what it is for us. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. So that's definitely a huge part of working on these boats. Not only learning how to uh, talk with the clients. My biggest fear of being a charter captain is what do you do when the fishing is slow? I think I ask myself that every time I go on one of these boats. What is the charter captain doing to entertain or to explain or to help change things up to make it an enjoyable experience? Because as we know, fishing is not just about catching fish; it's also about
Yeah.
participating.
Fishing's fishing, right? I mean, I'm sure you've had times where you've pulled up to a spot and you've dropped your electronics in the water and you're, oh man, we're gonna smoke them today, and they just don't bite. I mean,
Absolutely,
fishing's fishing.
absolutely, absolutely. So
So
learning
what's
those
that?
kind of things just helps.
Yeah, no doubt. And you've done a really good job of as far as sharing information. Your guys' posts, what I like about your guys' posts is they're always informational. There's always something else. Not, hey, look at this giant fish we caught. Fantastic. You can see that on Google, right? You can type in big muskie on Google. Um, but you guys are actually talking about, what you're using. And when we talk about what you're using, I'm not even talking necessarily about rods and baits like, hey, this we're promoting this, go buy it. You get into a little bit of the electronics, a little bit of the leader, the small details that not a lot of people really think about. But it that time on the water is cutting your learning curve, but that knowledge that's going out there is cutting everybody else's learning curve, like we talked about, that doesn't have that opportunity to be out there every day. What's it been like to I guess, how do you focus on that, or is it like a natural thing for you?
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned that because some of my friends know that I'm actually a teacher by trade. I actually teach dog training classes in the evening. So if you see me out fishing during the day, I'm rushing home to get home to teach class or private lessons. I do a lot of behavioral lessons. That's my real job. I
Mhm.
enjoy that. I enjoy teaching. I enjoy making sure people understand what the process is about, with my job. So I think that's where, that comes from. So I don't want to just say, here's the car, go drive it. I want to say, here's how we built it. Here's how we're going to teach you how to use it. And then that makes it a little more easy for people to understand it and learn from it.
That's awesome. So that's kind of a segue that we're gonna get into is a little bit about Rob himself. Now, you said you do work for a few shops over there on the Canadian side of our river and our lake here. So is that kind of the same deal when you're in those bait shops? Like, um, mine and Louis' philosophy is I don't care if you're a first time fisherman or you've been doing this for years. I don't ever want you to buy a product that you don't quite understand. Is
Absolutely.
that right? Like that's the whole teaching process. You got to make sure what you're doing and what you're using this for if you're going to spend the money.
Absolutely. And it doesn't matter whether I walk into the store, there's a store here in Woodstock, Ontario, I work pretty closely with. There's one 5 minutes from my house, that I participate in. And if I walk in there and I hear somebody asking a question about how do I run a deep diving crankbait or how do I run these, you know, lipless cranks or something like that, then I'm going to spend the time and teach them because they're going to remember that and they're going to remember that, hey, I picked up that lure. Yes, I do have a couple of companies that I work directly with, call it sponsors, call it partners, whatever you want, but I hand them a lure and teach them how to use it. They're going to come back and buy more because they caught fish on it, not just because I said it was a productive lure.
Right.
So
And
teaching them how to use it is the most important.
yes. Yeah, and it's like you said, it's kind of growing the sport for us because it can be very overwhelming. You know, we had a whole separate podcast on how overwhelming it can be. Like if you're just, you know, you're seeing all this stuff on Facebook or on social media. I want to catch a fish. Oh, this costs how much? This costs how much? I got to do this. I got to do that. And then you go on YouTube and it's just like boom, 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 boom. Like there's just so much information. So I like that's really cool to hear. You know that a lot our shops in our area are really good. I think that the guys on our side of the lake, they really help each other out and they realize kind of, you know, we're not just here to sell product, but, you know, to teach and make sure you understand what you're using. Electronics is a big part of that, man. Electronics is so expensive and there's guys out there just floating with it on.
Absolutely. I many of you know that I work with Lawrence,
Yep.
all navical products. So, helping people understand, which comes down to, another part of my One More Pass sport fishing is I do educational trips where I will help people understand, set up their boats. I do it, and that's probably what's taught me the most about fishing. Somebody says, "Hey, listen, I'm on Lake Ontario. I'm struggling to find the fish. 300 feet of water. What am I doing wrong?" And I'm like, you know what? I'll come jump on your boat. We'll go fishing for the day. We'll hang out. We'll see what's going on because every transducer, every graph works differently on every piece of water from Huron to Erie to eastern western side of Erie, and obviously Lake Ontario. So you see me going out to Bay of Quinte in the fall. There's two reasons why I go there. Number one, 16-pound walleye. Number two, I want to see how my electronics work on that water. I want to see what's happening. So when somebody calls me and says, "Hey, listen, I can't see fish," or "What am I seeing here?" I can say, "Yeah, I was there and I seen it. I know what it is. I know what's working. And I know what the difference is because that's a huge part of it. Just learning each and every different body of water."
Oh yeah. That's interesting you say that too. What's your stand? Do you like doing those trips more? Like those learning trips more? You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I'll take a learning trip over any trip. Like I do get the phone calls for the meat fish, where I'll get a business, they got a bunch of employees they want to take out and say, "Listen, I got a corporate trip. I want to take a couple guys out and just put some fish in their freezer." Absolutely. I have no problem doing that. But to me, that's what I've been doing for as long as I've been fishing, run out to Burwell, do a meat fish hunt, fill the cooler back on the dock by 9:30. The guys want to go home, clean their fish. That's awesome. But I would rather spend 6 to 8 hours on the water learning different things. Whether it be jig and bite, which was something new to us this year, jigging 70 feet of water off of Lake Erie. Like that was awesome.
Yes.
That got a lot of attention, and I probably won't stop thinking about that one all winter. So
We are going to circle back to that. So for those of you that are listening, I'm going to force you to stay a little bit longer. That footage to watch was really cool. Your Lawrence live really played a big part in that. And it's been really interesting because I've been watching a different guy on social media that's been doing it on some inland lakes over in Wisconsin. And I'm like, man, I've never really seen that done over here in the Great Lakes, but I know we have deep water. Next week I open up Facebook and I'm like, yeah, and there it is. So that's been super cool. But those learning trips are my favorite too. When somebody comes in and we don't do a ton of them, we're mostly the people call us and hey, we want to go catch a pile of fish. Let's go catch a pile of fish.
yeah,
But I have had people like, hey, I just got a new boat. I just got these electronics. I have no idea what I'm doing. Well, let's go figure it out. I'd rather do that and learn. And like you said, for the selfish reason, I almost learn more on those trips. I learn way more doing that than I do driving to said waypoint, dropping the trolling motor and just smacking on some fish.
absolutely. So
Um, so let's get into a little bit, Rob, of where is your home base? Because you kind of get to travel everywhere. So do you even look at yourself as you have a home base? And what got you into fishing? Have you been one of these little kids that's had a rod in your hand since you're two? Or where did this kind of all come from?
well, to answer the first question, where's my home base? My business is actually in London, Ontario. I do have a primary residence in Long Point, Ontario, so that does confuse a few people. So I guess my home waters would be Long Point, Ontario. If you see me with a lighthouse in the background, that's the tip of Long Point. That's my absolute favorite waters to fish. Unfortunately, in the last 2 to 3 years, our fish haven't been showing up till about July. So if you're looking for fish off of Long Point, be patient, wait for the water temperatures to come into play. But saying that, you talk about our rainbow trips. There's rainbow there all season until July when the walleye show up. So when those water temperatures change, we're switching from walleye to or from rainbows to walleyes. So that helps keep us entertained and keeps people spending money, getting out, using their boats, testing their electronics. But the real fish that everybody's looking for is the walleye, and unfortunately they just show up a little bit later in the season. Now, the other flip side of that is they disappear really quickly too. So my belief is that watching those telemetry videos that you've seen on YouTube, those fish take almost the whole summer to make their way around Lake Erie to get to Long Point, and then when September winds blow, those fish literally take off across the lake within an evening. So they can disappear that fast, or we just can't get out there because of the wind. So following the migration is a huge part of my own personal learning. Everywhere from Detroit River, Ohio, Colchester, Niagara. We fish some of the tournaments in the eastern end of the lake early in the year. Following that migration is the biggest part of my learning curve. Is
over here. I've seen you over here. We talked about it at the fishing show. I met you out by it's right across from the power plant, but I met you fishing with a crew, and I had no idea it was even you. And then we're sitting there talking at the show, and I'm like, I've met you before, on the water.
I do start out in the St. Clair River probably first, just because that's, we have a quick, easy run of fish on the Canadian side that will target a few of my buddies that we all team up together and we go down there and find those fish. And then, then we kind of slide down towards the Detroit River. And then, of course, Brest Bay's usually next for us. So the fish just can keep migrating throughout the lake, and we just keep on top of them, through dealing with different people that I work with. That's part of the game. It's like, I'll teach you something, I'll jump on your boat, I'll help you, but if you don't mind, you'll kind of let me know when the fish show up in your area. I appreciate that, and that helps me stay on the fish.
Having that good network is so important, because guys like you, guys like me, that I get bored of going out and fishing the same water all the time or doing the same thing all the time, because I have the opportunity to fish as much as I do. So to be able to have that network for me to go up to the Saginaw Bay, Saginaw River, Detroit River, Lake Erie. Man, you mentioned Burwell. I haven't been over to Burwell since before COVID, and I didn't even realize the walleye fishery that's over there, because I was just smashing those perch.
Oh, absolutely. And perch fishing out of Burwell 10 years ago was like world class. Unfortunately, the perch have moved on. We're not seeing them like we used to. We have small numbers showing up. There's rumors they're starting to show up again. Absolutely. The commercial nets moved in. They did their job. I got nothing against that. They have to do their job too and put perch on the table. But we also seen it in the local restaurants. Some of the chip stands and local restaurants that we were traveling to, they just weren't serving perch anymore. So it wasn't just us not finding them. I believe that the commercial nets were having a harder time finding them.
Yeah, that was, so when we were there, it was probably 2017, 2018-ish. And it was insane. Like, there were so many boats out there. We're fishing 50 foot of water. There's 3 commercial net boats, not even 200-300 yards away. And everybody just one after another bent rods. So, I mean, it makes sense. I don't think a fishery like that can sustain like that. But you also talk about the walleye up there in Erie. Is that solely like a water temperature thing when those move into Long Point?
I would say yes. Like you can literally watch just by the reports coming in through different avenues, whether it be, the local forums or Facebook or whatever else you're paying attention to. You can start to see when the locals are catching fish.
Yes.
Like I said, Burwell, you can probably always find resident fish early in the year, but they don't really get hot until the middle of July and August. And that's when, huge populations of fish start showing up. But also when you pay attention to some of the fishing reports, on both sides of the border, you'll start to see the guys from Ohio starting to, say, hey, I'm traveling to the line. I'm traveling, 14 miles out. And that tells me a big story in a hurry. They're coming to the Canadian line because that's where our fish are. So
yep.
As much as we like to travel to the line too, there's probably no reason for it. We're looking for bigger fish, obviously.
Yeah, that was something that was pretty remarkable. You were posting those trolling pics of you guys trolling. I'm assuming it was up there. I would never ask for this spot just for the pictures, because there was giant walleye and giant steelhead. And I'm like, what? Like, that fishery just never makes it over here. I'm assuming, again, it's water temperature and depth and all that sort of stuff. But it's unbelievable. No, like, the fishery that Lake Erie is, like, everybody knows it for trophy walleye around Catawba Islands, right? Because we're on the American side, and that's where everybody goes. But it is an unbelievable fishery to the east and the northeast.
Absolutely. So again, but we only get those fish, a certain time of year, and
Right.
they leave just as fast as they come. So we don't have as long a season as the guys in Ohio or Pennsylvania, but we definitely keep on top of them when they show up. Again, because of my schedule, my lifestyle, I can take a Thursday off and sneak out there because the wind stopped blowing. But you can't always get to the middle of Lake Erie.
Right. It'll be
So
interesting to see what happens for us over here, man. We've been seeing a lot of silverfish. There's a lot of Atlantics in the river. Like right now, I caught one. I caught a stud on accident the other day. He was in 4 foot of water over top of a weed bed. In our last couple springs, we've had really good coho, steelhead, and Atlantics. We don't see a lot of the browns and kings, so it'll be interesting to see what happens over on this side again. Since it really hasn't come back since the kings killed it, you know.
absolutely. So yeah, we've
Um,
got a great fishery. I don't want to talk too much about the rainbows. Pay
yep,
attention to a couple of your local video guys, and you're probably seeing a post coming out this winter.
I like
So
that. I like that. I think I know what you're talking about.
yeah,
Let's get a little bit into who makes this possible for you, because obviously you mentioned it, like you can't do this alone. This isn't, just Rob. You work with a couple companies that make it possible, and whether you want to call it a sponsorship or a business relationship, whatever you want to call it, you go about it the right way and you do it the right way. What are some of these companies that you work with? So, um, I know personally, I'm with you on Fat Boy Jigs with Roy. Shout out
absolutely,
Roy. I'm gonna get him on here. Um,
absolutely. Roy was probably not only one of my first contacts, but probably you talk about business relationships versus sponsorships, whatever else. I would call Roy more of a friend now than a sponsor. We work together. I can call Roy, in the middle of the day and say, "Hey, listen, my tire's flat. What do I do?" And he'll pick up the phone and answer it. So
he is a very good mechanic.
he's a very
Everybody
good
thinks he makes a
mechanic.
good jig.
Big shout out to Roy. Um, yes, I use his jigs. Everybody says, "Why do you use those jigs?" Because they work. I like the hook. I like everything about them. So they work. St. Clair River, Detroit River. Um, you know, next down the list, I work with John Sullivan and Mike Dickerson from Lure Lipstick. I use their plastics. Again, they work. Um,
Yeah,
I don't have to change things up. I don't have to buy 10 different products. I'm not exclusive to them, but I don't need to use anything else. It just works for me. So thanks to those guys. If I need a color, they'll work with me. There was a couple of colors the last couple of years that I'm like, hey guys, like this is working. We need this, and they produced it for us, and now it's one of the colors that they offer. So that's part of it. Working with the company to give them some feedback to say, listen, this is what we need. This is what we need to do our job, and they come through with us. So. Going back to Roy for a minute, he knows that there's one color I use, and that's black and gold, and it's now on the market. So that's probably one of my favorite colors. So
the Canadian Vampire.
the Canadian Vampire, absolutely. So I didn't name it, but I'm surprised he hasn't called one Tim Hortons yet, but it's coming.
Oh yeah, that'll be a. I'm sure he'll have some red and white one on the way. For that, he's got his bloody nose. That he's like that color. I don't understand. I'm like, dude, we sell that color more than any other color you got in the shop. So if you just want to paint white jigs and dip them in a red paint, keep them coming. Because I mean, just between Louis and his dad, they buy 50% of them.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But yeah, Roy's been awesome. John and Mike are great guys. We got Lure Lipstick in the shop this year, and you know what? Those guys work really hard. People can say whatever they want. Those guys work really hard. They're coming out with new colors. They're coming out. Their paddle tails are really good. They've got like a baitfish paddle tail, and then they've got like the, almost like a Kitech Impact, or like a Rage Swimmer, the bigger profile. They're just working, man. They're just working their butt off and they're grinding. Another one
And they're
that we
listening to the people they work with, and that's important. So
Yeah, it's the most important part. That's when customers come into the bait shop. I tell Louis all the time, the first 2 years of this thing, I made it rocket science. People want this. The people want this. They want that. They're going to tell you what they want. They're going to straight up walk in here and they're going to be like, hey, do you have this? That means they want it. And I'm sure John and Mike and those guys, it helps too. Mike tournament fishes and does stuff like that. So he gets to talk to a lot of guys that are doing that. And I think it really helps them out. So, um,
absolutely.
yeah, that's awesome. Another one that we work together with, I actually just hopped on their staff this year. We're not going to get into the whole long spiel of it, but I don't do a lot of like pro staff stuff. I'm more of like I want to do the business relationship. Being in the bait shop, you kind of got to be careful with that. But Lakewood is another great company. I know you work with Lakewood, correct?
Yep, I've been with Lakewood for about 3 years now. Uh, I can't say enough about those products as well. As many of the walleye people know, like you've got more baits than you know what to do with. Having different ways of storing them is important. Because I jump from boat to boat, having those
Yep.
extra pockets on the side is huge. I can put my own extra hooks, snap ring pliers. I'm a big fan of leaving extra baits in packages. So we talk about the learning thing. I'll jump on a guy's boat and he's like, "Hey, listen, I'm struggling on a dipsy diver." I'm like, "You know what? Throw a moon eye on here. I know you got moon eyes in the shop. We've talked about that before. How do you use them? How do you run them?" I put them on a dipsy diver, a rigger, or a lead core, and the guy starts producing fish. And
Yep.
my thing is I always kind of leave a couple behind because it's like a business card to me. It's like here's a couple of lures, give them a try. And again, once you teach somebody how to use them, they use them and they work. You don't need to go anywhere else. So that's what I like about the Lakewood bags is that I can store different things in them. They're bulletproof. I was on Terry's boat this summer musky fishing. He had a Lakewood bag from 30 years ago. It was amazing. I actually grabbed my little Lakewood bag, I put it on top of his and snapped a picture of it. It was one of my favorite posts from this year. Old
Yeah.
with the new, and everybody knows Terry's been doing this for a lot of years, and he's teaching me and he's helping me out here and there,
Yeah.
and it was kind of cool to see those two Lakewood bags together. So that's what I look for. Kind of fun post,
Yeah.
educational,
Well,
and it goes a long way.
the thing is with a bag like that, you look at you look at price points, and people are like, they shy away. But not only is it an easier way to store your stuff and get to your stuff easier, but it keeps them safe. That my biggest thing is keeping my stuff safe when I'm traveling because when you get in rough water, or you get on some of these Michigan roads driving your truck and there's stuff sitting in the boat, it's gonna get rattled around. So keeping that stuff safe is number one, and Lakewood does it right. Sarah over there, she is on us about being, with the company and doing the right thing and doing it right. So that I really enjoyed that whole experience with Lakewood, and it's funny. But what are some other ones? Um, you mentioned the Moon Eye. I think we might be one of the few or only to have those. And next year, I'm really going to bulk it up because for us, it works out whipping. But Yale Eye Lures, you are a huge part of that, correct?
Yeah, I'm probably a bigger part of that than what most people know. I've been the pro staff manager for the last 3 years. I've got staff members that work with me, both Canada and the U.S. I try and find someone in every different area to help us out.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, pro staff goes above and beyond just using the product and talking about them, helping us talk to stores, checking on stock, getting pictures of that. So that's all comes back to it. So I can give a big shout out to all the guys on my team just to tell them that yes, you're doing a good job. You're letting me know when the lures are. I can keep on top of Chris, to let them know what stores are needing more baits soon, and then in turn those guys kind of give me some feedback on what's working.
Yep.
So someone calls me and says, "Hey, listen, this color is working. This store's out of it." Hey, smart, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to go run that in that part of the lake. So
Yeah.
um, that's a big part of my learning thing as well. Learning how to deal with other staff members, learning how to run a team, keeping up with the store contacts like yourself and these other stores in Ontario. Just letting them know, like why don't we have product? Well, because everybody wants it at the same time. Let's try and order in July and January, before the big season comes. So most stores get it, but they forget about you. So if you don't mention it to them that hey, listen, you're out of stock, then they forget about it. So squeaky wheel gets the grease. You let them know they're running low
Yeah.
and they'll order more.
That's it, man. And what I really like about Yale Eye, it was one of those things that I wasn't putting it in because I necessarily knew you, and I also want to attract some of those Canadian customers. I mean, man, I'm closer to any city in Canada than I am even to Elginak down the road. You know what I mean? People always tell me they're like, "You have a little bit of Canadian in you." I'm like, basically am.
If we could just figure out how to do a drive-through on your dock, we could just pull through. You could throw it on our boat, charge our visa, and we just drive through. But
I know.
you got to be careful with the cross-border shopping on the river.
I'll tell you what, the cross border thing has had a lot more issues than I ever realized until I moved here. I'll tell you, me and the border patrol are pretty close. Thank goodness. It's it's kind of crazy. You talk about international waters, and you're like, oh, I grew up here. It's not a big deal. And then you actually grow up and kind of see what's going on. It's like, I don't know if any drive. Someone tried to do a drive by this year with a big cardboard box. Do we leave this on your dock?
No.
No.
It's
Not
not
only
worth
no, but hell no.
it. Absolutely.
But what I like about Yale Eye specifically is they're unique. Can you explain a little, like the hooligan, the moon eye? Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, it's been a really interesting to work with Chris over the last 4 or 5 years just to kind of help not only develop some of the colors. We've changed a few things throughout the time. Um, I think the Moon Eye was what got me started with Chris. Um, I like to run riggers and dipsies in the summer. So you talk about Burwell, riggers and dipsies at Burwell. That's all you need.
Yep.
Everyone talks about lead core. Yeah, it's easy, but nobody likes to reel it in. So put a Moon Eye down on a rigger, and you can take all the fish you want as fast as you want. So that was where I started. Again, he likes to. He doesn't like to, but I help him with new colors. So we've probably got way too many colors than we need. But
The color chart's insane, Rob. I was overwhelmed when I sat down when I was first opening the store because I only had probably $700 to $1,000 to spend on moon eyes, and I'm looking at the color chart and I'm like, oh my god, like it's not stock colors. They're stock colors, but they are not stock colors.
absolutely, he likes to put his own little twist on things. And if I mention to him, hey, listen, Barbie's going, he'll put a little twist on it and make it his own. And usually he makes it more natural looking, which is pretty important where I fish. So it works.
Yeah.
So then the Hooligan came out a couple years after that, and we started running them. We did some adjustments because what happened with the Hooligan and the Moon Eyes is the salmon guys in Lake Ontario started using them in the spring salmon, and it's a really well kept secret. But we actually went out, me and Chris, one day, and we went, no, we're going to put some pictures together. We're going to show people these work because they need to learn how to use these on spring kings. And so then we started learning that, hey, listen, we need to beef up these lures a little bit because now they're being used for other things other than walleye. So they got some really quick popularity with the salmon guys. So we beefed up the tail hook a little bit, put a little more material in there. Why I think they work? If you pick up a Hooligan or a Moon Eye, hold the hooks in your hand real tight and give it a rattle, you'll notice that it's got a different rattle than anything else.
It does.
I learned that a couple of years ago, listening to a couple of Lance Valentine's podcasts talking about different sounds. And so I started paying attention to it back then. And when the Hooligan came out and it's got that deeper, denser rattle, which is different than the other deep divers that we see, it really started to make sense. So me, the kind of games I play with fishing, I'll go down to a dock and see a charter captain, and I'll throw them 4 or 5 lures and just say, hey, run these for me today, see what happens.
Yep.
And 2 days later, they're calling you like, where do I get more of these? Like they're out producing the other side of the boat. And I'm like, well, here's where they are, and give me a call. We'll work something out for you. But ideally, just getting them in the hands of the people that were using them was a big part of it. And then they just exploded. They started traveling down the lake, and people started asking them for them on the all the way down the Canadian North Shore. And it started telling us that yes, they were working because everybody was talking about them. Again, I feel that it was the rattle. I think that was part of the design. It worked for us. Still today, it's I don't need to say to the horn of the Hooligan, but I only run Hooligans right now, and not because I get paid to say that, because I don't need to run anything else. I don't need to experiment. I don't need to try anything else. I know that the Hooligan's going to work for 90% of the year, so that's what I run.
Yeah. Confidence is key, man.
It works, so why change it?
Yep. And then real quick, I don't want to leave out. We got 2 more that I want to touch on here. I definitely don't want to leave them out. We're with Offshore Tackle, yes.
Absolutely.
Offshore does an awesome job, man. I'm very happy with them.
I've been with Offshore Tackle for over 5 years now. I can't remember exactly, but it's been a real good company to work with.
Yeah.
I get the products I need. I get to work with the people that are in my community. I think there's a great team experience there. So whether it's like, I know a few of the guys in the U.S. that are on the team as well. We talk, we share. Offshore Tackles sharing a few of my posts here and there. That's fun to be part of.
Yeah.
I've actually worked at some of the buying shows on behalf of Offshore Tackle, like the Triple S show. That was great to go down there and sit at the table and get to sell to some of the stores. So being part of it, learning more about the business is a big part of it. So that's something I really appreciate, having the opportunity to do that. I've been invited back again this year, so that's a good feeling.
Means you did something right.
Yeah. So And obviously this products speak for themselves. Um, between the boards and the clips, I use the clips everywhere. I don't care if it's on my big boards for muskie, little boards for walleye, downriggers, you name it. There's an offshore clip in my hand at all times, all throughout the day. So that's really important to stand behind the product you use and really put some faith in that and show people how effective they can be with more than just a walleye trolling board.
Yeah. And it's so much more than just a board. Like, so many people know about the offshore tackle board, right? But there's the snap weights, and then you can get into the tattle flags. The tadpole weights are huge, especially for like guys out on St. Clair and stuff like that. Like, there's no reason for us to be running dipsies in 16 to 18 foot of water. It's way easier using snap weights, inlines, tadpoles. There's so much more to the brand than, and everyone, oh, it's just a little piece of plastic. Look at it. I couldn't build that. Hell no, I couldn't build that.
No, and it works. I don't think I've ever broken one. If there's ever been one that's been lost off the back of the boat, it's usually because of a new angler trying to learn how to use the board, and again, teach them how to set the board up properly so you don't lose it in rough water. Even as far as how do you recover a board if you do lose one? Like, I always grab a guy and he's like, you put your eyes on that board and don't take it off. We're going to swing as hard as we can and go pick up that board.
Yeah, because sometimes you can't reel in all 12 rods and turn on a dime and go get it, right?
No, absolutely not. So
there's a process to it.
It's all part of the learning curve. And I started with big boards, and I very quickly switched to offshore planer boards, like within the first year or so, just because I learned about, how much easier they are to travel with, how much more versatile they are. I never got rid of my big mast and my big planer boards. I still use them a couple times a year, but and then I'm using offshore clips on the planer board mast anyway. So
yeah,
it works,
Yeah, that's awesome. And then the last one, I saved this one for last because I'm assuming this one has been a little different for you. And if I missed any, please feel free to tell me. But we're going to talk a little bit about Lowrance. So you've been working with Lowrance. You've been with them as this technology has just been changing. I mean, every year it's a major improvement. It's not even like it's getting a little bit better and a little bit better. Major improvements. What's it been like working with Lowrance and trying to keep up with this technology?
It's been a wild ride. Just not only being able to update my units when I need to, when there's new units coming out. Like, I just put the new Lowrance Pros on my boat this season.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't realize how good they were until I take a step back and start working on some of the previous generations, and I'm like, wow, there's the speeds crazy. The definition of the screens is crazy. Pairing that with the right transducer is probably been the most important thing that I've done with my boat in my career. I think a lot of people know that I'm posting pictures of sonar images, and I get asked 50 times a day, how are you possibly getting those images out of your graph? I think it goes above and beyond just the graph and the transducer, which we'll talk about a little bit, but wiring the boat, learning how to wire the boat properly, making sure you've got enough power to that graph, making sure the graph has got enough power to run that transducer. Those are all things that I've learned from working with Lowrance.
Clean power too.
Clean power, absolutely. Bypass that ignition, run your power right to the battery. Whichever way you're doing it, make sure it's clean power. You talk about working with Lowrance. I've got a really good friend. Again, I've met through the business. I work with him at the boat show. We stand beside each other all week, and now we're good friends. We can call each other and ask questions. He's tech support, at Lowrance out in Edmonton. He's great. I can call him up and say, hey, listen, what do you suggest? And he's like, yeah, absolutely. Make sure you're soldering your connections. Make sure you're shrink wrapping them. Make sure you're doing this. And I do it on my boats. I do a few installs for friends. I help people, and I make sure that I'm teaching them how important that is. And once they do follow my lead on proper wiring, clean power, proper soldering connections, then they're seeing the same results I am. So that's probably the number one thing that I learned from Lowrance, working with them and their tech support guys, and even their sales managers. It's been a really wild ride just to kind of keep learning and being part of that. And I think the pat on the back is when you get a phone call from somebody in the industry and they say, how are you doing that? And I get to tell them in return. I'm like, yes, I feel that now I'm starting to contribute back to the sport.
Yes.
So
You know,
that's
I feel
that's
like right after I hang up this call, I got to go out and check mine because it's funny. I work with Chase and those guys over at Imagine Marine, and they're awesome because I'm not qualified to do it. I'm learning. I'm not qualified. I don't even want to touch it. But you spend so much money on your electronics, especially nowadays. And like I said, there's like a lot of guys that are just out here floating, and it's like, those little tips and tricks are stuff that's not really a secret of the trade, but it almost is because we're thinking about it because most guys are like, they stretch down that ratchet, tighten up those bolts, and on the water they go.
yep.
Talk to us a little bit about that bite that you got on in 70 foot of water, jigging walleyes 50 feet. What they were 20 feet off the bottom, 20, 30 foot off the bottom, right? They were up in the water column.
Well, again, I'm going to give you a little bit of a shout out to my buddy out in Edmonton. He put me onto this. I think this is something I do out there quite often in the northern Canadian lakes.
Mm-hmm.
And he says you got to try a jig and wrap, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna throw it on. And I said, you gotta give me a little bit of intel, right? Because of course we're sharing intel on what we're doing and how we're using things. And he's like, okay, do it this way, go here, do that. And so I started experimenting with it. And another friend of mine, he's on an opposite shift or schedule as me, so he goes out and tries it on a Thursday night, and he's calling me on the way home. He's like, dude, I just like literally landed 6 fish in half an hour doing this. And I'm like, okay, we're going back tomorrow morning. So he gets off work. He works midnights. He gets off work at 6:30, meets me at the boat ramp. We go out there, and literally the first hour, we're boating fish like as fast as you can. And so the pattern was that day, again, Burwell was on fire. We knew that. We knew the fish were concentrated, so it made it a little bit easier to find them. We're not searching for fish. So, using my Lowrance technology, I go out, I'm scanning around, we're finding pods of fish. We don't stop until we find a pod of fish. That's absolutely key. So we're scanning around 20, 30 mile an hour. We find a pot of fish. We drop down on them. And like the first fish in the boat was like an 8-pounder. Like, it's like, okay, we figured this out, right? And then so we start putting fish after fish after fish. And it was great. 70 feet of water on active target. So we're standing on the bow of the boat. If you've seen my post, there's a couple of cool pictures of me staring at my active target, which most of you guys know I never stare at my graphs, but I couldn't take my eyes off it that day. The fish were coming in from 40, 50 feet away and smashing these baits on the fall. So we're dropping them down, straight down, vertically below the boat, over 70 feet of water, and like they're just inhaling them, like in their stomach. So unfortunately, most of you guys know that I am a catch and release guy. I don't keep too many walleye for myself. So we learned quickly that you get 12 fish, you're done for the day. So as a meat fish trip, it was great because, I still need some fish. So I cooked some up for dinner that night. That was part of it. But I did learn that, okay, troll first, do your catch and release, and then go to your jig and bite. So I actually took my daughter out a day later, and I'm a big part of getting the kids out fishing. I know you are as well. I hear you preach it all summer long. So I'm taking my daughter out every chance I get. And, being a teenager now, she's not a big fan of getting up early in the morning. So I put 3 or 4 fish in the boat and say, come on up, let's try it. You catch a couple fish, we'll go home. Well, within half an hour, she had her 6 walleye. And she's like, there you go, ready to go home, which I'm like, perfect, right? Do what the kids want to do. They want to go fishing for an hour, take them out fishing for an hour, go home. So that was great for them. They got her involved, let her be part of the fishing experience, not just trolling. She was excited about doing it. She had to do everything herself. She learned the electronics and how to watch the live sonar, and it made sense. So that was a good feeling to go out and teach, like I said, my daughter how to do this jigging bite over 70 feet of water. So were they 25 feet out the bottom? Honestly, they changed all day. So there'd be a pack come in. There was a thermocline that day, about 55 feet, as most people know this year. That stayed there for about 3 weeks. And you could drop it right down the thermocline and lift it 6 inches, and they'd smash it. So that was a blast. And they stayed there. But you would get fish come in 20 feet down, and you'd crank up as fast as you can, and they'd be waiting for it. Or they'd watch it fall from the boat, and they'd chase it all the way down to that thermocline. So it was really, really exciting to learn that game. And we actually went out and did that about 5 or 6 times that week, or within a couple of weeks, just to kind of play with that and learn it.
It looked unbelievable.
I got a lot of calls from different people, so I probably took out a number of different people. Charter captains who only troll came out
Mhm.
with me. We jigged, we trolled. Um, Chris from
It
Yalley came out with me one day. We jigged. Got him out of the paint shop. It was fun. So
it's
it was
almost
a fun
yeah.
experience.
It's like one of those things. Like it would not have been like how many forever. Those fish have been sitting in that thermocline, and unless you're a troller that just drug your baits through there, you'd have no clue. And you can just set up on top of them, small rod, like light rod and reel, light tackle, drop it down, bring them up.
Absolutely.
So we talked a little bit about finding those pods of fish, and we talked a little bit about a secret that you use to make your Lowrance a little bit better. Now, does that help you find those fish going 20 to 30 miles an hour?
Absolutely.
Let's talk about it. Let's talk
Let's
a
talk
little bit
about
about it.
Airmar products for a minute. Airmar transducers, I've probably been using them for about 8 years. A little back history on them. A friend of mine on Lake Sinclair, he was a bass fisherman, taught me the importance of an Airmar. I think back then we were using the TM150. Still a great transducer today, still available on the market. A few years later, a TM165 HW came out on the market, and I'm that guy who's like, I need that. So I put it together, put one on my boat, wired my boat up properly, and I think the first day I used it, I was out off of the west end of the lake and scanning around because I didn't believe that the fish were where everyone was telling me. There was a pack of boats, and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to set up my transducer. I'm going to scan around for a little bit, and I went away from the pack, and I found the biggest pot of fish that I've ever found. Scanning, no one was around, and I was hooked that day. So
Driving?
driving around 20 mile an hour. People were calling me going, what are you doing? Like you're doing zigzags out in the lake. Like you can't catch fish if you're not fishing. I'm like, I'm fishing. I'm using my electronics. I'm scanning. I'm doing some patterns, into 16 feet of water, out to 30 feet, back in, in and out of the dirty water. And all of a sudden I found this pot of fish, put our lines down, and it was game on. And I'll never forget that day because that was probably my first experience with that transducer. Because I could do it, in that 30-mile-an-hour range, my boat likes to plane at about 22, 25 mile an hour. So,
Okay.
getting up around 30 is just a comfortable speed, and marking those fish at speed was a huge part of that day. And it's been part of my morning routine every time I take my boat out. Even if I know I'm going out to 70 feet of water off a Burwell, I'm driving at 30 mile an hour scanning. It's telling me a story. It's telling me a picture. Where is that thermocline? Where are those fish sitting within that, water
Yeah.
column? So that I'm already starting to wrap my head around what numbers are going to work today. Am I getting my dipsies out? Am I getting my lead cores out? Am I getting my board rods out? What do I need today to make sure that it happens? So that transducer has absolutely changed the way I look at fishing. Of course, then you get the people that are non-believers, like, oh, I don't believe that. Well, jump on my boat with me. You want to talk about educational trip? I won't charge you to take you fishing for this trip, but I guarantee you, when you get off my boat, you're going to go buy one.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's I'm the first one to admit I was so green to electronics. I mean, to be honest with you, I'm a river rat. So I don't have waypoints. I use the green light there, or the roof with the hole in it, or the big roof with the A-frame, right? So like I wasn't big into electronics, and a lot of times in the river it's hard to mark those fish that are sitting on the bottom in all that structure. So these last, 3 years, 4 years have been huge for me getting better with my electronics. And probably 2 years ago, I found out that you can get separate transducers. You don't have to get the one that comes out of the box. Um,
Right.
so
And,
I
and then
loved. Go ahead.
I've found that, a lot of people are, I don't know if they're questioning it, but they're just not sure about spending that extra money on that transducer because they're like, well, listen, I just paid X amount of dollars for this, 9-inch or 12-inch graph that came with the transducer. Why do I need to spend that much more, on a transducer? Is it that much better? And again, by me posting some pictures, some images, I know one of the marketing managers from Navico is, called me and said, is it okay if I share your pictures? Like, absolutely. Like, that's why I do them. I've had Airmar reach out to me, multiple times and just say, can you send me those as a screenshot from your graph, so we can use them for other things? And I'm like, absolutely. That's why I do them.
Right.
Um, yeah, I again talk about taking my boat places to learn different water. Lake Simcoe, I think a lot of the U.S. guys know about Lake Simcoe and the perch. And I posted some pictures recently of the perch on Lake Simcoe, and you can count every single perch in that school. That tells me that, not only using these at speed is important, but what that species of fish is, and I think part of my game is not only finding those fish, scanning for those fish, and seeing those sonar images, is putting a fish in the boat so I can say, yes, that was this fish.
Yeah.
We've all watched videos online of what people think they are. I've been on boats where everyone calls out, oh, I think that's this or I think that's that. So how do you know? How do you know until you land that fish? Because it could be a big sheephead, it could be a muskie, it could be a
Yeah.
pike. We don't really know until you actually put that fish on the boat. So going up to Simcoe was a huge deal for me because it taught me what to look for in perch. So if I'm scanning out in Lake Erie in the next few years and the perch turn back on, I can remember back on those images, or I went to a perch ground, I seen images, I recorded images, and now I can look for them on Erie.
Yeah.
So that's again part of that whole learning curve that I try and achieve at all times.
And you're spot on. I don't want to spend too much time here, but you are spot on that literally just happened to us yesterday. I was side scanning. I marked a ton of fish in the river to the point where they were off the bottom. I was marking them in the dark space in the side scan, and I told Louis, I was like, this is the spot. I was like, this is it. So we turned back around, set up, and I'm like, I don't know if they're walleye, but how do you know? So we turn around, we set in there, second cast, 16-inch gizzard shad.
Well, that's exactly it. Like
It's
again,
like, all right, get out.
You know, I seen an image on Facebook yesterday. It looked like a 14-inch gizzard shad come off the Detroit River. Like I was blown away how big these are. I know they're in the river. I see them at the boat ramps in the fall.
I'm telling you, I'm telling you that when I saw them on side scan, I was like, because they were off the bottom, I didn't think they were walleye. I thought maybe perch, but they were too big to be perch.
Send me
So we
that
dropped
wave.
a lot.
Maybe a muskie near it.
Yeah, I'm going back out there tonight. I'm going, but we found there was like 2 or 3 spots that were like that where we got on them, and I was like, man, these are good fish. I'm looking at them on the live. I'm like, they're not big walleye, but they're keeper walleyes. No, they were all like, I swear to you, 14 to 16-inch gizzard shads. We caught 2 of them, and then finally I was like, we got to go. I mean, you could feel the jig hitting them on the way down. I was like, we got to get out of here. But you mentioned the Airmar transducers. Now, you're doing all that with 2D sonar, correct?
90% of what I do is with 2D sonar.
So you got, I don't mean to interrupt, but you've got guys that are going out spending $3,500, $4,500 on live sonar and live imaging, panoptics and stuff like that. So really, buying a transducer for your 2D sonar is a fraction of that price, and you can still get really good results, correct?
Right. And I don't know what the pricing is in the US, so I don't want to quote it because you guys obviously have different pricing than us. But in Canada, they're both between $600 and $800, which transducer you go with. So to a lot of people, that's a big investment when they don't understand it. But the same guy will go and, like you say, drop 3 or 4,000 extra on a live sonar.
Oh yeah.
So, do I use the live sonar as much? Seasonally. I definitely use it seasonally. In the rivers, I use it all the time. If I'm crappie fishing, I love crappie fishing. I use it every day. Learning how to use that jigging bite, I think part of that was I wanted to use my live sonar out in 70 feet of water to prove that it worked. And I've got some amazing videos of those days where you can actually watch the jig and watch the fish hit and reel it to the boat. So absolutely, those live sonars are working at 70 feet of water. Do I use it for trolling? No, I don't. There are a lot of people that are using them in both the muskie and salmon community. I just don't feel the need for it at this point. But definitely the 2D sonar is 90% of my day because I'm usually fishing open water. If I do go into structure, yeah, I'll use my side scan. So I will leave the 3-in-1 on as well. I do get that question.
Mm-hmm.
Should I take my 3-in-1 off and just use the Airmar? No, I believe that you do need both. So leave both on your boat. It will make a huge difference so that you can use both transducers when you need to. On the river, like you said, side scan helps. Out in Lake Erie, middle of the water, then you definitely want to rely on that 2D sonar.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. I think that's awesome. To be honest with you, Rob, we're at an hour. I can't believe it. We're at 56 minutes already, and we have more that I wanted to touch on. So we're definitely going to get you back. But I think what's really, really important was, touching on that sonar and a lot of it. The big thing that I want to sit down with you with, I think we could get a whole episode on it, but is the difference in the industry between the United States and Canada. Because you did mention there is a little bit different. And I always joke about going over there and fishing really good spots that are right at Canadian boat launches, and there's no boats fishing them. So we might have to save that for another segment if that's cool with you.
Absolutely.
All right, Rob. Well, I want to thank you very much, man. Obviously, I took more of your time than I thought, and we still haven't touched all the things that we wanted to touch on. But hey, I want to ask you one thing. I like to ask all my guests this, especially our listeners really appreciate it. Our viewers on YouTube appreciate it. If you had any advice to give to somebody about the fishing industry, any advice at all, whether you like it, it's work, whatever, what would you do? Because you said you're a teacher by trade. You do a lot of dog classes and stuff like that. What is it that you love about the industry? I don't know, I'm rambling. Talk to them.
Well, I know what you're getting at. What is my advice for getting into the industry? I think a lot of people like to put their hand out. I don't agree with that. If you ask me what my business plan for my fishing industry would be, is that I always offer something first. So if I came to you, Pete, at Hook One Bait, and said, "Hey, what can I do for your store? Can I promote for you? Can I show off your stuff? Can I post for you? Can I, come work at the show for you?" I'm going to do that first before I ask for anything in return, whether it be a small discount or favor or some intel or whatever else. I'm going to offer something first. I think that's important. Being a pro staff manager, being on multiple pro staff teams, I've always kind of lived that way, and I look at that way when I'm vetting different new staff members. Is that what have you done for the community first? Have you offered something in return? Some education, some promotions, something else. So I believe that's a huge part of being in the industry is offer first, then ask. And I think secondly, follow up with that. I think the biggest part of maintaining that is that anybody can get a deal working with a company or a sponsorship or a partnership or something like that. But maintaining that is everything. I think if you say you're going to do it, do it. If you say you're going to promote for a company, do it. It takes 30 seconds at the end of my day to put a post together to say thank you to the companies or the individuals that helped me get to where I need to be. And it's really important. So one thing is getting on the team. The other thing is maintaining your position on the team. Do what you say you're going to do, and then you'll be able to, not only stay on the team, but also, go up in levels on that team. That's a huge part of it. So keep that in mind if you're looking at becoming part of the fishing industry. You say you're going to be at a boat show or a fishing show, show up.
Yeah, man, I love that. I absolutely love that. I think that's insanely good advice, especially being from somewhere in my position now where I have a shop, and there's been people that reach out like, "Hey, can you?" It's like, I got to know that you're there. And I'm going to piggyback on that. It doesn't matter if it's with Lawrence or if it's with Roy and Fat Boy Jigs. If you're on the staff and you're representing a company, I absolutely love that to just do what you say you're going to do. Well, all right, man. I'll let you go get back to your super busy day. To our viewers and listeners, you can go tune into anything else that you tune into. Hopefully it's the rest of our podcasts. Quick announcement. There is a pre-order up at www.hookonebaitandtackle.com to get these hoodies with our big logo on the back. So head over and check those out. Louie's not here to tell you guys, but please like, share, and subscribe, guys. It really helps us grow this channel. It really helps us grow this podcast. And like I said, if we get to where we need to be, it's only going to benefit all of our viewers and all of our listeners. So thank you guys so much. Rob, again, brother, thank you so much for your time. I'm looking forward to having you back on again. I greatly appreciate that. And to the rest of you watching, listening, thank you. We'll see you all next time. Tight lines.